I like the dark. It's friendly.
Well, hello, and welcome back to my channel Box Office Poison. My name is Moxie McMurder, and today I want to talk about Sapphire. So I just watched Sapphire for the first time after a couple people recommended it to me. I'd heard of it, sure, I just hadn't gotten around to seeing it. I also noticed it was mentioned in Martin Scorsese's favourite British films list that he sent to Edgar Wright during the pandemic, which I will leave a link to in the description box below, along with my Patreon and Ko-Fi links.
Grin, grin, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
Now, Sapphire is another Janet Green story. She also wrote Victim and Cast a Dark Shadow, which I've already made videos about, and you should totally go check out, because both films are excellent. And something that I like about her writing is that she definitely has something to say. She was clearly a progressive person with films like Victim, which focused on homophobia, and Sapphire is no different. This time she's tackling race and misogyny through the lens of a police procedural. And now for a bit of context. The title Sapphire, I assume, comes from one of the 3 black women stereotypes. These 3 are the Mammy, the Jezebel, and the Sapphire. The National Museum for African American History and Culture describes the Sapphire as a caricature from the 1800s through the mid-1900s, which portrayed black women as sassy, emasculating, and domineering. Unlike the Mammy figure, this trope depicted African American women as aggressive, loud, and angry, in direct violation of social norms. Sapphire was released in 1959 and is a British crime drama set in London. It's directed by Basil Dearden, who directed the excellent Dead of Night from 1945 and Victim in 1961. It stars Nigel Patrick, Michael Craig, Yvonne Mitchell, Paul Massey, and is the film debut of Fenella Fielding, uncredited as lingerie shop manageress, and horror icon Barbara Steele is also in an uncredited role. Children playing on Hampstead Heath discover the body of a young woman, the titular Sapphire. As the police dig into who she was, they discover that she is biracial and has been passing as white. Her boyfriend is found and brought in for questioning, and it's not long after that we discover Sapphire was pregnant. So things are looking pretty bad for the boyfriend. There are some other suspects from the black community that the police are looking at, but more so, the boyfriend. And as far as the plot is concerned, that's where we're going to end it, because I don't want to spoil anything. But what I will say is that Sapphire, being biracial, brings a layer of nuance to the film that would have been lost if she had been black, particularly in the way that Sapphire turns her back on her black friends when she finds out that she can pass for white. The idea of passing and colorism is a tricky one when you consider that colorism is still rife, not just in Hollywood, but in all forms of media. And now for a bit more context. West Indians began coming to London in the 1940s and 50s after World War II. The British government encouraged citizens from countries still owned by Britain to come over and help rebuild the country and help fill job shortages. Jamaicans, alongside other Caribbean, African and South Asian people, migrated to the UK, with companies like British Rail, the NHS and London Transport being the largest recruiters. The Notting Hill riots happened in 1958, and this act of resistance by black people who were fed up with what was essentially state-sponsored violence against them really highlighted to people the growing problem of racism in the UK. Sapphire was released just 1 year after the riots and did surprisingly well at the box office and would go on to win Best Film at the 13th British Academy Film Awards. A.H. Wheeler of the New York Times wrote that while the film is not entirely in a class by itself, the combination of murder mystery and racial issues puts it several interesting cuts above movie melodrama, which is something I definitely agree with. A reviewer for the BFI's Screen Online said Dearden is not immune to prevailing prejudices, equating a young woman living alone in London with promiscuity and seeing an enthusiasm for jazz as evidence of dubious character. The film is littered with casual, unchallenged racism. Again, this is another point that I can agree with. In Sapphire, much like in real life, the police are not immune from the casual racism shown by various characters. And believe me when I say it's no better today. This headline is literally from 3 days ago. Sapphire, which was seen as progressive for its time, is obviously pretty dated. Not just in terms of the race aspect of the film, but in terms of how women are discussed too. For example, the superintendent asks Sapphire's brother why he allowed his 21-year-old sister to move to London, and far too much is made of the fact that she owns some risque clothing, enjoys dancing and going out at night. This is seen and portrayed as something far more dubious or sinister than it really is, and I kept expecting the film to take a bit of a turn, if you know what I mean. I thought she was a sex worker. The fact that everyone in the film describes Sapphire as full of life makes it all the sadder that this mother-to-be had her life cut short. Which brings us to the killer. But I'm not going to spoil any of that for anyone who hasn't seen it. But what I will say is this. The killer is an unexpected choice, and they give a fantastic performance, even if the reasons why they did it are a bit preposterous. So overall, I enjoyed Sapphire, even if I say it's a bit dated and more than a little heavy-handed. I always enjoy watching Nigel Patrick, and everyone is bringing their A-game to this. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know in the comments if you've seen Sapphire and what you think of it. Maybe even recommend me a film to cover next time. Until then, don't forget to water your plants, be kind to your pets, and stay spooky.
I'm going to give the people what they want. Sensation, horror, shock. Send them out in the streets to tell their friends how wonderful it is to be scared to death.